you know, when I started working here, the relationship that the staff here, the administration had with artists in the community was so warm and collaborative that looking back at the history of that is what I want to take forward. So that's kind of what this show is about, and kind of what this conversation, where it comes from, in terms of just connecting to the stories of the past and the ways in which artists engage with Salem Art Association, and just that really warm connection and conversation and that natural back and forth. And there are so many stories that, you know, we haven't, that you hear a little bit of, but that you never hear the whole thing of. And that's, I think, what we want to gather, is the stories that sort of made Salem Art Association what it is. And then kind of the ways in which we can carry that forward. So I think we just want to, like, we'll start with just going down the row of saying your name and maybe like what your position was, or the time that you worked here or spent time here, or just a very, very brief paragraph, sentence. And then we're going to start with Nancy Lindbergh to kind of, and Elizabeth, to give us the foundation of how this organization kind of got started. And then I definitely want, you know, we're going to hear a lot from these guys up here, but certainly it's meant to be a very informal conversation, so I'm not sure how we're going to organize all that, but why don't we start here? And I see some more people coming, we're going to let them in. So maybe Carol, do you want to, here, come on in. It's loud. Yeah, okay. So why don't we just start on that, Carol?
Okay, I'm Carol Bauman, and I arrived here from Iowa in 1971. And it was the first place I landed, and it became a home away from home. I had been teaching art in the public schools in Iowa, and so I ended up teaching children's art and adult painting, and made all my very best friends at that time. So, and then at one point I did do the class scheduling as well. So that's brief.
I'm Bonnie Hull. I arrived 1 year before Carol in 1970 from Illinois, so the Midwest, well represented. And I had really nothing much to do with Salem Art Association at all through the years, except as an enthusiastic gallery goer, until 2010 when I was first artist in residence in the old annex. And I really wish this had been my I made 50 paintings in 6 months. No telling what I could have done in here.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Vicky Falcon Vasquez, and I moved here in Salem like 22 years ago. I was born in Mexico. And how I connected to the Salem Art Association was when I was the executive director for a youth-led organization called Latinos Unidos Siempre. And through Project Space, which was one of the most amazing projects that we did. And that's how I got involved. Maybe that was like 4 years ago.
And I'm Eileen Cotter-Howell, and I've been an artist and teacher, and my association with SAA started in roughly 1988 when I had a toddler and a newborn, and I met David Works. So I'll stop there.
We moved to Salem in 1959 when I was 2, and my mother still lives in the same house. So I like to say that I think SAA raised me from a puppy in all different ways of involvement.
Kristen, say your name.
Oh, excuse me, I'm Kristen Coons. The grown puppy, the dog, the full-grown dog, yeah.
And I'm Cynthia Green Adams. I moved to Salem in 1985 to become the executive director of the Salem Art Association, a position I held until 1993. Great time. It was. Yeah, I love this place. It's great to be back here.
I'm David Works, and right out of graduate school, I returned to the U.S. West Coast, and I was looking for a job that was arts related, and I was interviewed by an executive director named Cynthia Green. And Cynthia Green. I always said, you know, Cynthia had the vision and I was the sweat. And so she hired me, and for the next 6 years, from June 1985 to February 1991, I had the good fortune to work with her, and the rest is history.
I'm Karen Runkle, and as soon as I moved to Salem, my husband was a law professor at Willamette, so that's what brought us here. I met Bonnie Hull because she was also a faculty wife. We came in '69, so we were all kind of in that little area. And Bonnie at some point said, well, let's take a calligraphy class at Bush Barn. And sort of all of this Bush Barn calligraphy class, I mean, this is all good new stuff for me, so we did. And eventually I ended up working here with Nancy Lindbergh. She was my boss, but we were more like just compatriots, or something, you know, we really did a lot. That was 1976 to 1980 for me. And that's my connection, and I have a great story when we get around to great stories.
I'm Elizabeth Potter. I'm a native of the community and had the pleasure of serving on the board of directors in the early 70s. I'm also a fan of Nancy Lindbergh's.
Thank you. Well, I had a show at the house on the second floor in 1964, which makes me the oldest living person here. And I was grateful to have to be on the board of the Salem Art Association in 1967, and then be involved forever and ever in this fine institution. So, thank you for coming.
So you think then we'll just sort of give it right back to Nancy, and if you guys want to, I'm just going to let you guys take it from here.
Okay. Well, I would like for Elizabeth, our historian, to begin with her comments.
Well, I've promised to do a really lightning recapitulation of the history of the organization. And the notes here, I apologize for, but it keeps me from rambling, so we can get going. But I would also like to say that as a preservationist, I will have something to say about the Art Association's legacy that I consider to be case-setting. The organization traces its origins to 1919 and the Salem Arts League that was formed by Myrtle Gilbert. Now, Myrtle Gilbert's husband, Monroe Gilbert, for decades was Salem's leading framer of two-dimensional works of art. He had a studio in South Salem that I think no longer stands. In 1938, the group incorporated as Salem Art Center Association for the purposes of having exhibit space in the Salem High School. In 1948, the group reincorporated as the Salem Art Association. In 1953, that was a very important date in the annals, the historic Asel Bush House of 1878 was bequeathed to the city, and the Art Association converted the upper story to exhibit space. Nancy Wallace Gormson, a daughter of local pioneers, and others effected the conversion of that upper story as an exhibit space for art by applying temporary burlap covering to the walls so that there would be a way to affix fastenings to the walls without damage to anything. In the 1950s, when Salem's population was just under 50,000, these were years of foundation setting. My parents were engaged in those efforts. My mother, Catherine Walton, as secretary, in 1952-53, and then as president in 1957. And she was succeeded by my father, James Walton, who was president in 58 and 59. Now, during that time, the art fair was a traditional clothesline exhibition, and it was all arranged surrounding the house, the historic house. And it was very family-oriented. Children were there enjoying everything just as they do today. Maxine Cooper became the curator of the Bush House in 1955 and served in that capacity for the next 20 years until 1975. Among the pillars of the organization in the 50s and 60s were Elizabeth Lord and Edith Scriber, the landscape architects who were friends and so forth of the Bush family. And then another name to be reckoned with was the strong leader Nora Anderson, whose name is commemorated in one of the rooms in the Salem Public Library. The Bush barn was partially destroyed by fire in 1963 and was remodeled as an art center that was, for the first time, detached from the historic house. Now that spurred formation of the gallery guides for exhibitions in the barn. And that let the house become a first-class historic house museum. And here is what is impressive to me. The partnership between the city, which owns the property, the real property, and the nonprofit organization, is that that partnership created a model that was applied then for collaboration in such subsequent projects as Historic Deepwood and the Salem Pioneer Cemetery. So that you have a city ownership and yet a private nonprofit taking responsibility for operating a program within the historic property. So local history, landscape preservation, and the arts are prospering side by side, and this creates, in my opinion, an exceptional community asset and attraction. Finally here, in the 1970s, we were introduced to a period of professional direction, new ideas, and experimentation in fundraising. Nancy Lindbergh becomes our executive director. Offerings in art classes are expanded in the Art Center, and grant seeking was stepped up, and the Bush House Auxiliary is formed and flourishes. The community population now is pushing 69,000, and only by the year 2000 would Salem's population reach 137,000. So that gives you an idea of the proportion of the city population that we're eyeing for membership in this organization. Among the popular fundraising ideas explored was living with art. Some of you will remember those gala invitational displays of art in and around the furniture setups on 2 levels of Rubenstein's furniture store. Those were quite successful events. The Art Association, we'll just wrap this up with the drawing a line and underscoring the fact that the Art Association had the support of the civic leaders of the community. The member roster in the 70s had reached 750, and of course we had the cooperative support of 2 local newspapers. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to follow Elizabeth to emphasize our history and the legacy that the Art Association built its activities on. And the legacy was not only great people, strong, energetic supporters, but it was on the goal of making the arts accessible to everyone in the community. And secondly, the goal of providing education to people in the community, from 3-year-olds in the kindergarten to some of us seniors. We had terrific classes that were offered over the many years. When I was a board member in 1967, and a couple of years before that, of course, we were all volunteer folks who cared about the arts. And so there were numerous committees, the gallery committee, the finance committee, and so on and so on. And we all worked together to try to do something for our community and for the arts. In 1973, or before that, the board of directors realized that we needed an executive director to kind of lead the group and everything else. And we hired somebody who came from Tennessee and really didn't fit into the Oregon, what do we call us? The Oregon way. And so he and I stepped in and said, well, I think I could direct this group. And by God, the group was so great, I could do it. And we developed more wonderful classes. We reached out to the business community to support us. We involved numerous people doing things. In 1974, as was mentioned, the sprinklers around Bush House exploded and sprinkled art on the artists in the artwork around Bush House, which was the Summer Art Festival. So we decided that we needed to move the festival south of London. And in 1973, to your chuckles, the gross amount of money made for the art fair was $2,700. And from then on, everything took off. The other thing I want to mention is our classes. We had classes for kindergartners every day, and then we had classes, of course, for teenagers and adults, everyone. We had calligraphy classes, weaving classes, painting classes, drawing classes, pottery classes, galore. Something for everybody to whet the appetite of what the creative process is all about. Hand, heart, mind, working. And one of my favorite happenings happened when we made some grants. We wrote some grants, got money to bring the arts to the blind school, the deaf school, the developmentally disabled schools. And this is a picture of Mary Lou Zeke's hands on a blind student. And I think it's just one of the very best indications of our devotion to bringing the arts out into the community that we could have. We had super great gallery exhibits, and I think Karen has something
story.
to show you regarding that. And so in the very end, I can say that we have a stunning group of people working terrifically hard to bring the arts to everyone and to do as much as we could to educate our community.
Thank you, boss. When I came to work at the Art Association, I think it was in 1976, maybe it was a little before that,
I
because
think so.
Helen Blumenstiel died in 1975. This is the first teacher of the Salem Art Association. She came to Oregon with Louis Bunce and that gang with the WPA. And her name was Helen Blumenstiel. And she was a friend of mine and a friend of Nancy's and a friend of many of us, but she was a true independent woman. And one of the things that Nancy and I did during the years we were together was to create the first retrospective of the Salem Art Association. We were down at Adolphson's printers, night and day, putting together, I have a copy of the catalog. We had this wonderful catalog. Jack Irely wrote for it. Stella Douglas wrote for it. I mean, it had terrific essays, pictures. I mean, it's here and I'll get it out. But that was one of the most exciting things that ever happened, because Helen Blumenstiel was living up behind Pinnacle on a farm raising sheep and cherries. She was from New York State, from Rochester, I believe. She had been with the Art Students League in New York, and she'd studied with Hans Hofmann. She was a painter. She later became the art director, or the, at Linfield, chairman of the art department at Linfield. And I met her by getting stuck in her driveway. And after that, Roger Hull, Roger, did you know her? Did you meet her when Nancy and I met her?
We met her through you. We didn't know her.
Yeah, well, I was getting stuck in her driveway. She was very nice to me after she got unangry and invited me up, and I got to know her, and she started telling me of her, I saw her art, it was all over, she was painting, and she was just a character, but a character in a dignified way, not a jokey character. She was a brilliant, really an artistic way. Anyway, Helen became a friend, and then when I was working with Nancy, I don't know if we all had the idea at once, but when we found out she was the first teacher at the Art Association, I think it was 1937, and Ruth Douglas was the one that hired her. She was the head of the arts of the board at that time. And so we asked Helen if we could do a retrospective, and I started collecting the artwork, which is so much fun because there were paintings all over the valley, and it was a beautiful show. I wish we had a video of that show. But the exciting thing about it, I brought a bunch of stuff, and I'll put it out somewhere, but the exciting thing about it to me was, that was a time when we had 2 newspapers, and each newspaper would do a full page on the Salem Art Association show. The columnists would write about it. There would be articles in the McMinnville paper, the Portland paper. I mean, it was big time, and I've got all that with me tonight. I don't know where I could ever put it. Anyway, it's probably in the file. But it was such an exciting time because Helen she died before the show. The show was in January of 1976, and she died in March of 1975. But she wanted us to go on with it. Mm-hmm. And she said she was sorry it was in January, because she said nobody goes to art shows in January. Anyway, that was one of the most exciting things for me, was being part of that strong a history experience. I mean, one that went all the way back to the WPA, and here's this little woman up there raising sheep. I mean, who knew? Anyway, and she did write a journal. She had kept a journal, which she later shared with me and some other friends, and there are copies of her journal in the Halliford Archive, Northwest Artists Archive, right? And it was fascinating because this is a woman who never married, was in the war, new artist, painted, loved solitude, took care of her sheep. I mean, there are pictures of all this. Kathy, where's a place that I can spread these pictures afterwards, maybe?
I'll pull a table out.
You know, just for people to look at. And
But show it anyway.
well, I have some pictures of her. I also have, I'll just, maybe I could pass one around.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The thing that's so exciting about it to me was now I don't even read the silly paper anymore. I mean, I liked it when there was a newspaper that had news and that touched on people's lives in various ways. There's Helen, and there's even a picture of me here. But this is the kind of big stuff you got. You know, I mean, there's some of her art. Oh, and there's a picture in here of the first Salem, the first building, the old Meyer and Frank store. I've got that in here too. And then there was one there. Oh, this was wonderful. She was an artist, a farmer, and a teacher. And she was a teacher because of Linfield. But I don't know if you can't see that very well, but she lived in this shabby little cabin up there. I think for a while it didn't even have a bathroom. You know, I mean, she was a tough broad. Anyway, well, I don't know if you want me to pass things around because that's kind of distracting. So we'll just put some stuff up. But I mean, I do have things to, oh, here's our catalog. Oh, yeah, here's the catalog. Isn't that gorgeous? I mean, that was classy. It was very beautifully done.
Still is.
And it has a listing of all the paintings and who they were borrowed from and when they were, you know, I mean, it was very professional. Of course, with Nancy Lindbergh, you don't do anything unprofessional. This is a woman that keeps you on track. And then we also had a beautiful, this was the Salem Art Association announcement that month for Helen Blumenstill's show. So that was, I guess that to me was, in my experience at the Art Association, that was the biggest deal. And it was because she was a friend and because it touched so many people's lives. So that's what I have to say and I'm done.
Wow.
Carol, do you want to add at this point? Do you want to add at this point?
Or somewhere, perhaps. I was just thinking, we haven't mentioned Franny and David Dunaway, who were a huge part of this venture early on. And when I came from the Midwest, I was a Midwest proper, shall we say? And Franny was probably the first person from here I met when she came out. If you knew Franny, she was a whirlwind. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have I gotten into? And anyway, so I ended up talking to Nancy and ended up teaching children's classes. And we made a very big effort to have classes from 3 years old all the way up so that the children had a place to get exposure. They never got into school, hardly ever, and I don't think that's changed. So that was a very big part of what we did. And then for adults as well, as Nancy has said. But I got to thinking, Franny used to photograph all of the exhibits. And I don't know if those slides are still somewhere or not, but she had them all. You know? Have you got them?
Yes.
Good.
Basement.
I never knew what happened after she died. That's good. So.
One of the things I always wondered was, just can you talk about the barn remodel? What was that like? How did that happen? How did the planning go? Who made decisions?
Well, in, I think about 1976 or 7, we needed more space for pottery classes. We needed a place for a printing press. And so that's when our super great supporter, Compton, what's his first name?
Stuart.
Yeah, Compton, the banker.
Stuart?
Who has the trustee, who is the trustee for Bush Park, agreed to let us build an addition to the barn. So that's what we did. But it was not at all as glorious as this addition, which is wonderful.
So Nancy, did you mean the construction of the barn itself, or this?
This.
But Kathy, did you mean the?
Well, I guess one of the things that's so exciting for me about
Yeah.
this is I'm not sure, like, Okay, the barn was remodeled after the fire, that was in the sixties, and the
Right.
barn was remodeled, and then when was this, when was the
And so
annex
then
built?
this was built
So,
somewhere between 76 and 78. I
okay.
think probably around 77.
And was it built for ceramics, or what?
It was built for the Art Association to expand pottery classes and other classes.
And Nancy, was there like a potter in residence when you were here?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Brooke, somebody.
And Mary Lou.
I'll think of Craig Martell.
Oh, Craig Martell was
We
here.
had a kiln, we built a kiln,
Yeah.
among other things.
And there were weavers here all the time. There were looms. Yeah, I remember that.
So when I came, Fred Hammond or Heyman
Yes.
was the potter in residence, and he was just exiting. And then came Gary Bloom, who stayed for a stretch of time. And after Gary was Burkhart Kleiber, who stayed for a number of years as well. And I don't know that a potter in residence followed Burkhart.
Craig was in there somewhere.
Oh, Craig was in there too?
Before,
Was
Craig
Craig?
Martell.
yeah, he was there for a while, because when I first came here, he was the potter.
Oh, so I missed Craig. He must not have been, he must not have done it very long. Or unless he did it before.
He did.
Was, oh, okay. So was Craig here maybe after Fred?
Yes.
Okay, so Craig must have been the outgoing person when I stepped in. Does that sound right?
He was Fred, Gary Bloom, and then Craig Martell for 2 years.
Okay, and then Burkhart.
Yep, Burkhart Kleiber.
I'm glad we corrected that.
Yeah. Something I'd just like to mention about the remodel, and I don't go back that far because this was 1985, but I can remember, first of all, I just gotta say how overwhelming it is to just be here. Okay, because all of these people I know, and it's not like I know them in a single capacity. The arts in Oregon in 1985 consisted of highly enthusiastic, passionate multitaskers. So when I would run into Nancy Lindberg, she may have been former executive director of where I was working with Cynthia Adams, but she was at that time with the Oregon Arts Commission and guys like Peter Hero, Sears, other people.
Terry Milton.
Yeah, you know,
Terry
and
Milton.
so I look over here and I, you know, I originally came up here with my family from Los Angeles in 1959 because we used to camp out at Silver Creek Falls, and my dad used to take me around the Bush House. And then he'd take me down to Willamette University. Well, who knew 30 years later I'd be living in the Bush House, working here, and then a few years later teaching at Willamette, you know, and working down there. So there's kind of a kismet here, and Nancy brings out that picture with Mary Lou's hands, you know, with someone helping them mold some clay. And I'm thinking, the last time I was in this building, there was a potter's wheel right here, you know? And this was the pot shop. And I walked through this fabulous remodel, and old memories, and all of the volunteers who were not only went on to become well-known Oregon arts people and art makers, but they were volunteers at midnight helping to get a holiday show together. So the people who were really busting their butts to make a living could do so, you know? So in a sense, it's just like, wow, it's kind of like a time explosion of all this multitasking history and the time I spent, and I may have spent 9 years in school, you know, doing graduate work and everything, but my real arts education came from this place and with these individuals. I'll never forget Cynthia, and this is something that stayed with me my entire arts career. Anyway, it was like, you know, we didn't have a lot of money, but we had a lot of passion We had we had big footsteps to fill, and there was an interest, and the perpetuation of the arts at that time was that even though that we didn't have the money, we had the energy, the youth, the strength, and the 600 volunteers from whom we could select and choose to help us do it. And so we just perpetuated, and I'll never forget that attitude made all the difference. And it was worth money, it was worth time, and it brought us to where we all are today. And I'm just thankful.
Indeed.
Indeed.
One of the things I wanted to hear more about was kind of where you're leading to, which is that, I guess Hallie Ford opened its doors 15, 20 years ago?
1998.
1998. So before that, Salem Art Association was, the place to be. And so I wanted to hear any of you who want to answer. Can you talk about the community or how, how that was, what Salem Art Association's role in the community was at that time? Maybe if or how it's changed since Hallie Ford opened, or
I don't know how it's changed since Hallie Ford opened, but I do know that when I first came to Salem Art Association, Cynthia and David were running it, and they were so welcoming and so supportive and so energetic, and just, it was like, oh my God, I'd never been around a group like this who, I was just a starting artist, and they were, for some reason, David had seen my piece and gave me a show in the Focus Gallery on the just having one piece. And I told him I had others. I didn't.
That's great.
Because I was not going to pass up this chance. Anyway, my connection after that, the way that they nurtured new artists along was amazing. And it allowed you to grow this way, not just, going forward. Now it's kind of in arts, as an artist, sometimes you get pigeonholed in a particular way. They never did that. They just let you go, whichever direction you were going to go in. It was very free. And I think it was after your time, but also someone told me, it was Peter Held, asked if I would teach. And again, I didn't really see myself as an art teacher, but I said, okay, and did. And first was teaching in what is still, I think, the kitchen back here at the barn. And I think I was the first teacher to teach in this space, in the annex, when it moved over here. But my connection to the annex was when we first moved to Salem in 1978, taking a pottery class here. And that, I was an English major before that. So this was new stuff for me, and it was exciting. And so SAA's position in the community, it really was exclusive. There wasn't any other place that you could go. Willamette did have night classes, but if you were just kind of dabbling and learning, this was the place to go. And the fostering of creativity and the sense that you were supported was amazing. And, and from there, I've been working, I was co-chair of the art fair for the last couple of years. So I'm still kind of connected with SAA, just in different ways. So.
I think organizationally, it just happens that an organization has ups and downs, peaks and valleys over a long history. And when David and I stepped in 1985, were you 86? Did you come in 86? I can't remember.
June 85.
85. Okay, we both started 85. And when I came, it was at a lower point. So it was a great time to step in because
The bar was low.
there had been some financial challenges. Some staff had to be laid off. And I arrived at a point where everybody was ready for a change and ready to see growth again. So that was a really great time to be coming to the Salem Art Association. And within a short time, I would say a lot of growth did occur, and more expansion of exhibitions, expansion of programming. Mission Mill was just coming into its development in the late 80s, and the Art Association was going to be expanding some programming over to Mission Mill, and there was the idea of the weaving studio there. A lot of energy and a time of a lot of great growth. That was before the Hallie Ford Museum, and there were some occasions where we were able to do joint exhibitions with Willamette University. One of my funny stories from back then that I probably shouldn't say out loud, but now it's too late, is setting up a really big ceramics exhibition that was taking place at 2 locations, and at the Bush Barn and at Willamette University, and having traveled all over Portland and other places to pick up massive ceramic works to hang at Willamette and at Bush Barn. And I don't know if anyone here remembers what the old elevator was like in the art building at Willamette, but if you left, if you weren't like,
I can't believe you're telling me.
I know, I got myself in trouble. If you weren't like standing there holding the door, it would automatically close.
And bang
Go
on it.
downstairs.
And go downstairs. Yeah, okay. So we're up there hauling stuff, hauling things out, in and out. Thank goodness everything was super well packed. But I turned my back and here's this elevator that's, it's heading right toward that big ceramic piece. And then what happened? It kind of touched it. But it was really well packaged, so don't worry about it. Honestly, it was very safe.
Who is it now? Hallie Ford.
Actually, everything turned out just fine.
Didn't it?
Thank goodness for me. And I still remember the artist.
I do too. It was a scary day. Yeah. And then there was the hauling around of Clifford Gleason paintings all over, picking them up from all over Portland and metro area and bringing them down to the Bush Barn. And
I always liked your Christmas shows. They always had a theme, and it was just crazy. And it was a lot of work, but it was really fun to go to those. What, glitter or plum pudding was on or something? Do you remember that?
I think, yeah.
Was there a glitter one, David, where somehow glitter got all over the carpet and you couldn't get it out?
Yeah. Gold glitter. It was just.
Ron Callan was he was the writer for the Statesman Journal, and he was telling me about that. When I told him about tonight, he said, "Oh yeah, I remember one. The only thing you could think of, I remember one Christmas show where David threw glitter all over and they couldn't get it out."
Well, I used to, address these letters to people, and I'd throw in this glitter, and I knew they'd hate it because when they'd open it up, it'd be all over their floor. And I thought, wow, it looks pretty good in the gallery. That's good.
I think too, just in terms of this studio space, there were some great workshops that took place out here between the mid-'80s and early '90s. And 2 that come to mind were Kurt Weiser had a workshop here that was, had a lot of people coming from all over the metro region and the Salem area as well and beyond. And then Marilyn Levine, who some of you may know Marilyn Levine's work. She did sculpture in clay that looked like leather and did these constructions that were in a lot of museums and other places. And she actually came to Salem to do a workshop with the Salem Art Association. And again, it was a time of, I feel, everybody sort of putting out whatever they needed to make sure people were welcome and included. And she ended up spending, like, I did a homestay with her. So Marilyn Levine was staying in my little tiny house up on Superior Street one weekend after she drove her car up from Oakland to come to SAA to do a workshop.
You had, I went to one at David Gilhooly.
Yes.
Did
yeah.
a David
Uh-huh.
Gilhooly workshop,
That's right.
I think in here.
Yep, it wasn't.
And he, it was fabulous because he was talking story about being at school with Deborah Butterfield and Mr. Volkos and all this stuff. And he was like talking smack about some other people. It was like, oh, really, you felt like you were in the know. But he did also some, he was doing the frog, Oreo cookie frogs, but he also did he was doing big bus, sort of taking off from, was Arneson doing the big bus? So he was taking off on like the big frog bust and doing craters by putting, I'm holding it up to my head, but he was putting little firecrackers in the ceramic volume to get those craters in the workshop. It was very exciting. So I feel like it was very significant to get to sit and witness him working for a whole afternoon. It was fabulous.
Something about the Marilyn Levine story triggered Cynthia when we were in exhibits committee brainstorming with people, Jim Mattingly, other people to come up with the year's exhibits. Contemporary cups. Cynthia had a background from the Whitebird Gallery as well as Contemporary Crafts Gallery in Portland, and she had an amazing backlog of connections in which she was able to tap into, and we could bring in pieces specifically made exhibit specific for Salem and the Salem Art Association, like the piece Marilyn Levine did, etc. What was so wonderful about her having shared that with all of us is that it would perpetuate, for example, with Michael Whitenack at the University of Oregon, and they would request that we contact those artists to package the show and make it available to other institutions in the region. So it wasn't just a Salem Art Association show, but Michael Whitenack and his organization at UO could pack it and travel with it. And that wasn't the only show. I would guess during my 7 years here, there were probably a half dozen shows that went on the road.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So how were some of the decisions regarding programs made? I'm curious about that, and any of you can speak to that too. There's so many different kinds of programs that could be offered. How were decisions made about what you could do, or what were priorities?
It's interesting about you and
Well,
project space, how
yeah.
significant it is to bring Vicki into the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just hearing all the
interesting.
stories, all the wonderful stories and things that you say about being out there with the community and the emerging artists, we know that now our artist community, we want to stay here. We don't want to go out to a big city, and we want to bring more life to where we've been living for so long. And just having access to art, having access to all these different resources is crucial, especially for underrepresented communities and low-income families. And also knowing that in schools, art is just, there's a limit to art as well. Just being able to bring our kids here, or for students or for children to be part of Project Space was amazing to me. So Project Space, when we came in, was through a student that had, one of your students, Roberto Duran, right? And we had made a connection through a student who was part of this community youth group. And we had been doing the Urban Art Fest, which was a little bit different. We were bringing the art, we were bringing a different type of art. We were saying that we had so much to offer, and we had to kind of like do it ourselves. But then here comes the Salem Art Association with a resource, also letting us use our voice and our art, and a different type of art. And feeling like we were important, like we mattered in the community, was very amazing. And from there, me being part of the committee was also very important, because now I could tell people that I knew about this huge opportunity that a lot of people didn't know about, especially for our younger artists. And so then through the years, I think I have people come up to me and tell me about their art project, or tell me about what they're doing, and I know this is a great resource. This is a great community, and like you were saying, those multitaskers or those different types of artists, I think that we all respect each other's art, but we want to learn about each other's art as well. So Project Space was that space to be experimental, to be who you were, and to just like throw something out there that could or could not be art, but it became part of you, it was part of your heart. So for us, that was art. Just being able to build a community there with the art that we were creating was amazing.
It's interesting to think just in terms of the evolution of what it takes to have people feel like they belong. Like in the beginning, you're saying you have like hundreds of volunteers. You know, that's sort of the way it worked originally, it sounds like, where it's a different manner to have people feel like they belong, because staff are, you know, it's a paid, it's just, we've evolved as a people in the larger community. So it's just, it's a beautiful thing, the way the programs have helped facilitate that sense of how to get people feeling like they're belonging to it.
I think that me coming from a diverse community, a Latino community, and feeling a lot of times in my own community that I don't belong or that I'm different, and a lot of times people address me as different, and just being able to sit here and be an equal, and that what I express and what any type of diverse community express is beautiful. And also going that extra mile with that linguistic barrier. I know with Kathy, we've done shows and where let's do it in Spanish. Let's bring out, you know, let's make this aware to other communities. And they might be bilingual, but maybe Spanish speaks to them better, and maybe they understand this concept better because there's language inclusion. And that for me is very important. And that for me, I value that, and I respect the type of work that the Salem Art Association has been doing around that as well. And we see our community now is changing. I mean, we have a more diverse community. We have, like I said, more artists that want to stay here in their community and they want to learn, and we need more resources. And it's beautiful that we've been having this resource here, that we want to work with people. We want to be passionate about what we do. We don't want people to limit us about what we want to do. And we want that encouragement. And the Salem Art Association is that encouragement, is that kind of like you're stepping it up, you're getting better at your skill, and you're finding out what other skills you can gather.
Has it changed? So is having, when the organization was more volunteer-based, does that change the dynamics from an organization that now has staff?
How many staff are there now?
About 10.
About 10, or is that the FTE?
I think FTE is maybe 9. But I mean, there are a lot of volunteers.
I think there's a lot.
Or something
I
like
think, were we 5 FTE when we were here?
But they, two of them were part-time.
Oh, then that wouldn't be 5FTE. That would
Well,
be-
I don't know that. That's, I don't know that terminology.
Were they full-time people or part-time people? Some were full-time and some were part-time.
Employment.
Employee, full-time employee.
Well, I think when there are lots of volunteers, of course, you're going deep into the community, and drawing people from all sorts of lives. And I think that's a really fine, strong thing to be aiming for. I mean, there needs to be a balance, I hope. Because in the very end, as we in arts administration know, the arts build community. We hear that all the time. And that's so true. That is really so true. That passion and that love is drawn from people, from everyone.
And Kathy has really built, project space,
Kathy, how many years have you been?
2007.
She's at the top of her head. Yeah, like 11 years or.
It's been that long.
Wow, that's great. But you haven't eaten Sarah Swanberg's.
No, I haven't, and I'm hoping that
Rest of
I
it.
don't want to be her time. I got a little ways to go. We'll see. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a real change, you know, the lot has changed. But it's always hard to know what to put your time into. And so, so that's another question I have in terms of arts education, you know, was that always the focus? I mean, Nancy had mentioned that in the beginning, is that something
And I
that?
think it goes way back to 1919.
Mhm.
And certainly 1938, and then, I mean, I think people back in 1919 in the small communities, women and men valued the arts and wanted their children to learn about the arts and other people. And that's so important, the valuing of the arts.
And Cynthia, was that the same for you? Was the focus really, the priority really education?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And actually during that stretch from 85 to 93, the amount of education space increased. So we took over the basement, well, not the basement, but a room over at the Bush House that hadn't been used for a long time. I don't know how that room is being used now.
Was that when Jim Mattingly did the printmaking?
The etching press went in there.
Yeah, and so that space got expanded, and in addition to that, some of the education programs with youth ended up going into schools. And then the space expanded yet again with the Mission Mill expansion.
And what was that like? The Mission Mill expansion, can you talk about that a little bit?
The Fiber Arts
Oh, okay.
space,
Yeah.
yeah, which after I left, I'm not sure how many years after that, the Art Association managed that space, before Mission Mill started to be the primary,
Well, it was,
programming.
the Textile Design Center. It was called the Textile Design Center, and like Shelley Sokolowski was.
And Shelley was after
Okay.
yeah.
And, because I remember teaching classes, so it was also open to other classes outside of textile classes.
When I was there, it wasn't.
Okay.
Well, it was
Maybe
pretty
a
dedicated.
transition, yeah.
On the third floor.
Yeah.
That was
Fourth.
SAA's fourth floor, was it fourth?
And we know because my
Yeah.
mother's still a leader there.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, there was
That's
a,
changed.
And also
Nelson,
the dye house. The dye house was also, because I taught workshops on the dye house.
So did you teach some classes at Mission Mill?
yes,
Oh,
and I
good.
also got to be a helper to a Nelson Sandgren watercolor workshop that was very memorable to me. I made muffins and tended Mr. Sandgren's needs.
Oh, nice.
And was just like a helper. It was, I don't know who, I don't remember who, or I think of all the different
That's
roles.
cool. Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so that it is interesting about classes, and I think the relationship of classes to the community and how, like you mentioned, exhibits probably, and Hallie Ford, and how that role has shifted perhaps because Hallie Ford's come in and served in a whole new capacity, but also classes, and the fact that really that was such a, I mean the class list, whether it was the very, very beginning, I have to share that my first involvement, besides the clothesline art fair, I remember, but I remember there being a wheel, you know, at art fair you could try, and gosh, it was like the coolest, gushy thing, and I was like, it was the great, so then I took a class, and when I was probably in junior high, from Dale Donovan, I don't know if you guys, Dale Donovan, under where the printmaking, that was a ceramics studio there, and he was like so great. He was like hippie artist. This is the 70s. We were, there was a, you know, we were all having a.
You had an attitude?
Oh, it was a revolution going on, you know. And so it was very, but that was a, you know, a class, and it was serious. And there was nowhere else to take that kind of class in Salem. And then, you know, the evolution of then offering so many classes and opening up the ceramic center and classes here. But then other agencies and groups have come up to teach classes. So I think you see it, SA has done a good job of adapting and then evolving from that kind of classic, just how do you go take a class how to paint or something, that to something like project space. I mean, really, I think that is, due a big part to Kathy, Kathy Dingus Rice, and your ability to see where there's redundancy and where there's some need for something new and different.
And then also part of the evolution too is that there's been a shift in the Salem Kaiser School District. And they used to have art classes in the schools, and that went away. And when it did, thank God that SAA stepped into the void.
When was that?
Well, I think it was just before you came, really.
SAA, I mean, artists in the schools.
Artists in the schools, it shifted, I mean,
You were doing
we
that.
were
Yeah,
teaching
absolutely.
here. We were teaching here.
Arts and
though.
education.
Arts and education.
But not nearly to the extent that it is now. I mean, really.
It actually did grow quite a bit during
Yeah.
the stretch of time when I was here,
Right.
and it's probably continued to grow. But
Yeah.
I think one really wonderful continuous thread too has been the work that's happened like at Hillcrest and McLaren through the Oregon Youth Authority, and those programs have continued over decades, which is pretty amazing, with all kinds of residencies that you just don't see very often an organization have that kind of history with an institution like that.
Yeah, nobody else is doing that.
Right. And interestingly, too, well, this is not all that interesting, but when I was here at the Salem Art Association, I remember seeing some copies of grant requests that Nancy had written when she was here so many years before and then with the work I do today up at the Collins Foundation, I have access to all these files that go back to the 50s and 60s, and I can go now today and look at grant proposals Nancy wrote so many years ago for the Salem Art Association to do the programming that she was just showing you when she was starting this conversation. I know. There's history hidden in every corner of the state.
Yeah. Do you guys have questions?
I think one of the things that might add to the arts education and how your role has changed a lot is that until I think about the mid-70s, I came to Salem in '69, and there were no public big void for a certain segment. And then from that, also the Salem Public Schools had their annual art show upstairs in the barn. And that brought a lot of the community into the schools. Don Walton at that time used to go to every single grade school and pick up artwork. And he was the curriculum development person for the grade schools when they still had those people. And got up to, at one point, there were 5 of them, one for each district and a supervisor. And that's when they started using Salem Art Association really as a resource. So that's part of the history of how art education here for the grade school and preschool level started, I think.
So when exactly did the arts and education program start? Was that with you, Cynthia, or before that?
I think Claudia Cave was the first.
I hired
Yeah,
Claudia, yeah.
Yeah.
When I was in the 6th grade, what would that have been? I don't know, yeah, that's too hard. 60-something, 68 maybe, something like that. So somebody came to our school, a guy came to our classroom doing ceramics, and he was like the artist. So wouldn't he have been from, probably somehow from the Salem Art Association, don't you think?
Yeah, when I came there, and before I hired Claudia Cave, there was somebody in the position before, and she worked out of her home and managed the arts and education program. And I don't know what year that program would have started in terms of funding from the Oregon Arts Commission. Maybe Terry knows.
And didn't we have artists like John Cousin going into spray
Yes,
and around?
yes. Oh,
I
yeah.
had the beauty of that.
And that was
Oh,
like
I just really tapped
73 or 74, I was in
Yeah,
this
that's
class,
right.
he did a class.
That's right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Stephen Adams, my husband,
That guy?
yeah. John J. Cruzon came to Spray,
That was really great.
A residency for a
a
year.
resident for an entire year.
Yeah.
And they produced a magnificent portfolio of prints at the end of the year. So Terry Melton, back at the back, do you remember when the Oregon Arts Commission started funding arts and education in the schools?
1971.
Okay, so
Maybe it was a road.
that's probably when it started here at SAA too, wouldn't you think? Maybe?
Correct.
Do you suppose that's when the Salem Art Association then would have begun its Arts in Education, Artists in the Schools program?
I don't know.
Okay.
I used to always love being as staff when we had the arts program preschool here, because they were always in and out, getting stuff, and everything. And you don't know how many of them over the years have come up to me, given me a big hug. They're all grown up, and they go, "You look the same as you always did. only you're a lot older."
So in a way that speaks to the need, right, for art and the need for expression, and that this is a unique place that has not only stayed in here but gone out and done that. And that cultivation, right, for artists to continue being artists, for artists to not leave that desire and that passion for art, and that art can be a way to make a living, even when people have been telling us that, what are you going to do with that? But more than that, that is also a way to make us better human beings, and that we can share something together. And I think like that picture with the hands just like spoke to me. For me, it was just amazing because there's no barriers, right? There's no limitations, and being able to start with children, youth, and even emerging or new artists to continue and develop that passion and continue cultivating and continue educating. That's very important for the Salem Art Association to continue that. So, thank you.
And that was one of my thinking, like moving forward. I know Sarah was really interested in talking about the agelessness of creativity, but she's not here. But and there are definitely any questions or anything. But one of my questions is definitely, what are your thoughts on the space going forward. And some of the things that you found most important when you were working with the community, or what you know about the community now, what kinds of things would you prioritize, in this? Yeah, Casey?
I haven't thought about it. When I first moved here in '94, I came here and took a couple of classes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was initially coming to Salem, I connected immediately right here. And so I've been involved since then, almost, off and on a little bit. But I've heard from people that our time of not having classes has been painful.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are asking, when are you going to start doing classes? When are you going to start doing classes? And so we are starting, but I think I really want to underline how much, what we've heard from everybody here and what I've heard in the community, the class aspect is really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I liked about the barn was that it was a barn and it was informal. And people didn't have to dress up and come to openings or anything. They could come into the gallery in their overalls. And I think that this space welcomes all sorts of wonderful classes in the future. And people are not going to be dismayed or uncomfortable about coming here and learning.
I think that's true because there's this perception, right, sometimes about art and in a gallery. And sometimes as an artist, we don't feel like we can make it there because maybe we don't have the skill or maybe we don't have the means, the economic means. So being able to provide those workshops or those classes and start your way and see art differently, and like we're talking about being people and creating what we can learn from each other. And I truly understand what you mean about this space being that welcoming point. So thank you.
The agelessness, or that way, an idea for the future here, thinking back when there was money in the 70s in the schools when John Cruzen was, doing the residency for a year. Also at Sprague at that time, Douglas Campbell Smith would come to the school for a day, and you just write yourself out of your classes and go paint all day. And I didn't have to go to college to learn about history and stuff. But one of the things was, and Bonnie Metzger is still around, but she came. This is what I was thinking of, like having an artist, come, and then we created through her prompting, I think it was like an installation of fiber or something, but that kind of workshop where, you have more mature people working with younger, it was just very invigorating, and just to have that free kind of project-based type
Cross-generational
type event that happened where you're not really sure what the outcome is going to be, but there's faith, and it's a good idea to have us all come together. Yeah, that kind of thing would be cool to bring back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have something coming up next summer with teens and an artist.
That'd be cool. Oh, that's awesome. Small group where you can get the power tools out. Yeah, that's right.
Kathy, I think that the education component of SAA is one of the most important parts. I've always felt that, and I'm kind of sorry it got written out of the mission statement.
It did.
Kind of, yeah. It definitely got watered down. But it is important. It's important to the community, and you have brought it back and taken it out into the schools. You were far more involved in the schools than you ever were 20 years ago when you were doing this. So, and that's been very important for Salem Kaiser. Yeah, so, anyway, so there you go.
I would like to comment on the mission statement. I've not seen it recently, but the mission statement for the Art Association must surely incorporate something about community history, historical interpretation with the Hazel Bush House Museum. And it's no accident that an art association is headquartered here, because the Bush family represents the kind of leading family of the community, well-educated and steeped in the arts. The children of Hazel Bush III were, some of them were avid photographers, and they were interested in the arts. And I like that connection, and that's an important background to represent to the community. And I know that Rouse Sutherland, as the director of the museum, makes sure that happens when the public arrives. But I think the mission statement must incorporate this other purpose as well.
Yeah. The history's in it. It is. Yeah. Is education not in it anymore? I missed that.
It's in it, it just doesn't have the
Well,
same
yes,
essence.
it might get mentioned in just how we are involved in all aspects of community life.
Yeah, I think it aspires to be broad.
Yeah.
Then we have to. Yeah. Wait. Let's look at that. So when in this space, is there a certain kind of art that, you know, coming from the sort of the history of Salem Art Association and what Salem Art Association supported through the years with artists and supporting artists, and maybe the kind of art that was supported? Are there any thoughts towards the like what artistic direction it should take, or the kind of art it should bring in or can bring in? Does that make sense?
I think we should be open to all kinds of art.
Yeah, and I think that will change, like you'll have more of one thing at one time and more of the other at some point. But yeah, staying open and available to all kinds of arts, and I think that's also part of when we're including diversity, is all that, expression of art, dance, music, photography, everything. So being able to recognize art as a, diversity is important, I think.
I'd like to see a ceramic artist like Heidi Group,
I'll teach the first
yeah.
workshop.
the kind of workshop where you're not doing it too. Yeah, I like the idea of just watching somebody else work. You learn so much from watching other hands. As an art teacher, it's like I try to say to the kids, I'm just, you have to watch my hands. And watching, it's a beautiful gift to get to watch the nuances and all the information that words cannot come close to sharing. I think that would be wonderful. I would sign up.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Someone, a craftsman, can tell me all day long what he's doing,
Yeah,
but I can watch him for 10 minutes
exactly.
and learn books with the information.
That PBS movie about the guy moving out to Alaska in the woods, have you seen that? Oh, well, look it up. In the 50s.
Oh,
It's
right,
fabulous.
yes, that's an amazing
Yeah,
film.
and you just watch him build the cabin. I mean, I
Yeah.
can just, he hardly talks, and he's
There's-
making tin utensils. You're right, watching others make things, watching Bonnie quilt, or, it's rich. Ironing, watching her ironing.
I just thought of this space is everyone creating art. For example, there's music, there's maybe you doing pottery, people are watching, someone's taking photographs, what's happening. The whole expression together, we're all doing something, that interconnection of art. I think that would be amazing if at one point we would do something collaborative together, even independent, but we're together almost.
Yeah.
I think you should do something on gardening.
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 Yeah, I agree.
With the Lord Schreiber.
Yes, because we have the new curator of the Learning Scribe Garden, is here tonight. Lindsay Kerr. Yeah. And
I would like that too.
yeah. And of course, that's just right across the street.
Well, the first event in here was them, you know. on
Yes,
September
I
9th.
know.
So
John
looking to-
Olson.
I love
Yeah.
that idea, yeah.
So I think, I don't know what it would be, but
Yeah.
something,
Yeah,
but, you know, you two can talk and
yeah, that would be
come
awesome.
up with something
I
good.
agree. Yeah. Questions? I'm opening it up now. We can-
Roger had a comment, I love yours.
Is this going to be used at times as an artist in residence studio?
Yeah, so through those doors is a 400 square foot studio that is like only a making space. This is a making as well as a showing space. So, you know.
I'd like to hear from Bonnie about her experience here as artist in residence when it wasn't like this, but this is still.
Yeah.
Well, it was, it had humming, light.
Mysterious,
And,
Serious.
mysterious.
serious humming lights that could not be fixed. Kathy assured me these couldn't, and I suggested, oh, ballast, and she said, no, you can't fix it. So she brought me a small CD player.
Very noisy.
And I unrelentingly, and I was to be here 2 months and wound up being here 6 months. And I played Bob Dylan, so I know why he won. Because I memorized all the words to Modern Times and crazy loved it. So it was a lovely space. There wasn't very much interaction, though. I invited people in, and people did come sometimes. But it was a beautiful space to work in. I think it, you know, any artist would be happy to work here. And I just want to say that listening to everyone tonight, it's like these little flashes. I didn't think I really participated in the Art Association early days. But actually, I did take a pottery class when it was in the house.
Yeah.
Somehow in that little back part. However, I was pregnant at the time, and the wheel, well, it didn't work. So, but Karen, of course, went on to become a very, very excellent calligrapher, and I didn't. And David, I was on some committee over here because I would get these things in the mail from David, and the envelopes were beautiful. I have them still, and they will go to the Pacific Northwest Artists Archive at one. Beautiful. He would write real big your name, and then there'd be underlined. Oh, it was fantastic.
Those worked really well for fundraising too.
Those were brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, I bet there are a lot of
Personalized.
Yeah.
With a little glitter on it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And
Yes, I just want to say how wonderful it is to have this happening tonight. To hear from people from the history, it's like you are blessing the new space. There's this connection between old and new, and the new building, the old building, and kind of bringing it all forward. It's sort of like somehow it seeps into the behind this facade is the old building, right? I mean, we're kind of creating a resonance or what do you call it, like a rhythm of that old and new. And I just feel really blessed to have been able to meet you and hear you and kind of touch into that really longer history and as we move forward. So it's like, thank you so much.
It's been a real joy for me because I rarely get out. And so it's really good to be around people that I want to be around. But at the same time, I think about the thousands of people that are sitting here behind us that should be here, whether it's Dorothy Schlieski or Sue King or my friend Stephen Hill or all those peoples, the Case Beers, the Echelons.
Oh, the Shermans.
It's like we're going to forget everybody, but we're not. You know, so it's like through our efforts, they still live, and so it's like I can't help but, you know, it's like what I learned from them, and we just passed it on to somebody else.
We're always getting on somebody else's shoulders.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Casey, because that's what this first exhibition is connecting to that amazing history that I got from Sarah Swanbrook when I started here. I felt so honored to meet some of the people that she knew, and I felt that passing on, and I feel so honored to be here now, and I want you know the younger folks, and it's coming through us. So thank you for that. Yeah.
And I also was an artist in residence here, and I remember the buzzing lights. I'm feeling so nice that there's no buzz here.
Try teaching in it.
Yeah.
I did. It's awful.
Well, thank you. I will bring out a table.
Thank you.
White cake. Bobby.